Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listeners, to Kardec Radio. We are here from our studios of Kardec Radio directly to you to talk about the individual in the world. Today, we have a lot to talk about our own selves. How should we lead our lives in our daily activities? Because we are spiritists, or we got to know spiritism, should we change? How so? Is there any prohibition? Is there any guidance? Well, we're going to share with you a message that is probably one of the most important ones in the Gospel according to Spiritism, and we see most important in terms of practicality, because it talks about our daily lives. In 1864, the Gospel according to Spiritism was published by Allan Kardec, and we are celebrating 150 years of that very, very day. And this book has changed lives around the world, literally changing lives, transforming, saving lives, and this message may be also life-changing for you, for all of us around the world. If you have any question or suggestion, you can communicate with us directly, because we are live. We are here live. This is Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we are here at Blog Talk Radio. If you go to the channel of Kardec Radio, you have a chat room where you can communicate with us directly. If not, if you're not willing to communicate there, you can call in at 858-769-4705, or you can also email to kardecradio@kardecradio.com. We are here beginning the month of August, and this month is all about many teachings of Spiritism, especially some books of André Luiz. We're going to talk a book that was just released by Odyssey of America, Sex and Destiny, by André Luiz through the hands of the medium Chico Xavier. But not only that book, another book, The Messengers, Marco Magalhães and Marcos de Clay from Canada. We are going to discuss this book in a week from today, The Messengers by André Luiz. And then follow to that, we have a beautiful discussion, live discussion, that is going to be led by Marco Magalhães and Adriano Barbo from the Mount Vernon Spiritist Center. This is a very special month in which, halfway through the year, we're going to stop for a moment to think about messages that are unforgettable and really to be paid attention by each and every one of us. Discussions throughout the month of August will be celebrated as the month in which we are celebrating the Gospel according to Spiritism. And for those who called in July on the anniversary of Kardec Radio, remember, you're getting your Gospel according to Spiritism special edition in the mail. And for those who are calling in the month of August, you're also going to receive the same gift and offer from Kardec Radio and Odyssey of America. Let us kickstart the program today by listening to a message that is really important for us. Many people live their lives as if they are going to live in one reincarnation forever. But life in one reincarnation goes by very fast. And sometimes we forget about the power of the present. And this message is all about the present, only today. A message that you can find in a book and CD, Enlightening Messages, at the Spiritist Society of Baltimore website, ssbaltimore.org. Let us listen to this message, and after the break, Daniel Assisi from California is here with us to discuss the individual in the world by the Gospel according to Spiritism.
Only today. Throughout your whole life, you will never have another day like today. Remember this. and attend to all good that you can do. Be useful by helping someone. Pay heed to your duties. Happiness and peace, hope and care are what you wish to sow in your path. Joy and favor are gifts that you wish to offer. Relationships that you need to mend, courtesy at home, the most simple and the most demanding work. Review, readjustment, corrections, forgiveness, signs of care and esteem, spiritual support during the work that you embrace and bless. Not one of these things should you delay or leave for later, because time will not return. In a day like today, you only have once.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Getting to the Light, Spiritist Therapy for Discarnate Spirits is a small book that offers guidance to Spiritist practitioners and Spiritist counselors. Purchase your copy at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
If you missed out on a previous shows, no worries. We have an on-demand section of all previous shows and interviews. Go to our website at www.kardecradio.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Help prevent suicide by reading and sharing these books with others. 2 great books are available to help in this Kardec Radio campaign to prevent suicide. Suicide, All You Need to Know, by the international Spiritist speaker Richard Simonetti. You can buy your copy at www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com. Also, Memoirs of a Suicide by the medium Yvonne Pereda. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Kardec Radio now offers more programs during the week and weekends. Every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can follow the beautiful program God at Home with Francisca Kranz and the British Spiritist community. They will brighten your days by doing a God at Home meeting wherever you are in the world, while teaching you how to do the same in your own home with your family and friends. Every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you will hear incredibly inspirational Spiritist talks directly broadcasted by Spiritist Network. They will be true educational moments to carry out to immortality. Every Saturday, live interviews, Bridging Health and Spiritism with the host Dr. Vanessa Anceloni. You may ask questions to the interviewed guests by calling 858-769-4705. And every Sunday, tune in to Spiritist Awareness at Kardec Radio. You will hear a series of segments on a diversity of Spiritist topics. Kardec will broadcast the Spiritist Moment with Kirsten DeMello, the reading of the Spiritist book by John DeRosa and Steve Shepard, Spiritism in Your Life with Drs. Marco and Joyce Magalhães, Spiritism and the Gospel with Luis Sergio Marotta, Spiritist Education for Youth and Children with Bernadette Leal, Spiritist Music with James Marotta, Neuroscience and Spiritism with Dr. Vanessa Anceloni, and many more segments coming soon. Enjoy it all and nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here at Kardec Radio, and actually for those who are listening to a different sound, it's just because we are not in our Chantilly studios of Kardec Radio. We're actually traveling outside of the United States. We're in Brazil. We're in an improvised studio, so that's the reason why we may sound differently to you. But hopefully we can be as clear as possible, and you can always participate live. If you're listening this to on demand, you can also send your questions, as many listeners do, through the contact form we have at our website, kardecradio.com. And we'll be very happy to listen from you and reply to your very questions and suggestions. We love your suggestions as well. They are always very welcome, and we know we have a very large listener audience to attend to, and we'll be very, very diligent to get back to you as soon as possible. So, dear listener, we are here to discuss a message that is very, very important. In the Gospel According to Spiritism in 1864, Kardec published in chapter 17, item 10, The Individual in the World, a message that can guide us in our daily lives. The world today is suffering quite a lot. And what do? How do we behave? This message can be our guidance in that regard. It can really demystify a lot of behaviors, tell us about probably no prohibitions, but I'm not going to answer those questions because we have a friend here with us to help us in that regard. Daniel Assisi, who is the founder, director of a center in Los Angeles, Blossom Spiritista Society. He's here with us, and he's going to tell us this and much, much more. Thank you so much, Daniel, for waking up much earlier than anyone in the western part of the United States and being with us at Kardec Radio today.
It's a pleasure, Vanessa. Thanks for having me.
So it's very happy to be with you here and to discuss with you, Daniel, a message that can be very transforming. The individual in the world. Before we go to the message, Daniel, we're celebrating 150 years of the Gospel According to Spiritism. What does this book mean to you, Daniel?
Wow, that is such a great question. This book is just, for me, such an amazing book because it really is a bridge between the great teachings of the Christ that we generally find in the New Testament, but sometimes seems so difficult to understand, seems sometimes so distant from our realities because, the language is different, there were different times and different names of people that we're not familiar with. So I love that the Good Spirits and Kardec, as the editor of this book, were able to bring those teachings of Christ to us in a simpler and very logical and powerful manner. So I really find this book to be a bridge to me to better understand what I previously thought were very convoluted ideas about how to behave and how to live. And this book, I feel, makes it very practical for us to break it down to understanding terms that are very clear to us, and provide some powerful logic to really strengthen our unshakable faith and help us have what the Spirits sometimes call enlightened faith, right? So it's really, really a fantastic book, I think.
And Daniel, because it was published 150 years ago, many people may claim that this book is outdated. What do you think about that?
This is it's something that we find, I think, everywhere in our society today. Everything that's not, 10 minutes or younger, people are quick to judge to be outdated. But, there are some messages. There are some universal messages that they might be old, but they're never outdated. And I think that the message of Christ, the message of how to live well and how to have a good behavior or searching for your own code of ethics is really a timeless message. We find that from the beginning even of our Western tradition of philosophy, even the earlier philosophers were also looking for how to live well. So I don't really see this book being outdated at all. I feel that it actually livens up the conversation quite a bit, because it's a way of bringing these great old traditions of asking yourselves how to live better, how to be happy here on Earth. Is there a world, after Earth, and all that kind of stuff, to be really, really relevant and quite the opposite of outdated. I think that more and more as we look around, we see that, we have a place for this in our lives. We should be maybe spending a little bit more time talking about how to be happy here in the world, how to be an individual in the world and find happiness. So I for me at least, I find it that message not to be really conducive to anything practical or to be really even realistic. I find it to be a great book that can be read at any point in time in our lives, at any time in the bus, at home, at night, the gospel at home, in a group. It's just really a treasure of life.
Yes, you're right, and it's very hard to find universal messages, and this book certainly contains universal messages that are timeless. Now, this very message, Daniel, that we're going to discuss today is from a protector spirit, and it's titled The Individual in the World. We're going to play the voice recording of it, and soon after we'd like to discuss it with you, okay?
Excellent.
This is a message from the Gospel According to Spiritism, Chapter 17, Item Number 10, The Individual in the World. A sentiment of compassion must always animate the hearts of those who gather under the Lord's sight to implore the assistance of good spirits. Therefore, purify your heart. Do not let any mundane or futile thought linger in it. Lift up your spirit to those you are calling, so that, finding in you the proper dispositions, they may profusely sow the seed that should germinate in your soul and produce within it the fruit of charity and justice. Therefore, do not think that in incessantly exhorting you to prayer and mental evocation, we wish to advise you to live a mystic life that keeps you outside the laws of the society in which you have been condemned to live. No, live with the men and women of your time in the way that men and women should live. Observe the social necessities, even the frivolities of the day, but do it with a sentiment of purity, which may sanctify them. You have been called to enter into contact with spirits of different natures and opposite characters. Do not clash with any of those with whom you might find yourself. Be cheerful and happy, but of the cheerfulness provided by a clear conscience and the happiness of the heirs of heaven, counting the days that will draw them nearer to their inheritance. Virtue does not consist in assuming a stern and gloomy face or in rejecting the pleasures that your human conditions allow. It is sufficient to report all the actions of your life to the Creator who has given such life. It is sufficient when one begins or finishes a deed to lift one's thought to that Creator and to ask Him, in an impulse of the soul, to grant His watch care for carrying it out, and to grant His blessing for finishing it. In all that you do, look to the source of all things. Do not do anything without the thought of God purifying and sanctifying your acts. As Christ said, perfection is found entirely in the practice of absolute charity, but the duties of charity extend to all social positions, from the lowest to the highest. Those who live in isolation would have no charity to practice. It is only through contact with their fellow beings in the most arduous struggles that they find an opportunity to practice it. Thus, those who isolate themselves intentionally deprive themselves of the most powerful means of perfection, since they have only themselves to think of. Their lives are those of a selfish person. Do not imagine, therefore, that in order to live in constant communication with us, to live in the Lord's sight, that you must put on the cilice and cover yourselves with ashes. No, no, and once more no. Be happy in accordance with the needs of humankind. But may your happiness never hold a thought or commit an action that might offend God, or anything that might cloud the face of those who love and guide you. God is love, and He blesses all those who love virtuously. A Protector Spirit, Bordeaux, 1863.
By the way, we want to thank John DeRosa for recording this beautiful piece of the Gospel According to Spiritism. John DeRosa with Steve Shepard is one of the hosts of a segment on Spiritist Awareness every Sunday at 8 p.m. It's actually the recording of the Spirit book by Allan Kardec, something that is quite phenomenal. The work that they've been doing is phenomenal. By the way, Steve, wherever you are, congratulations for your new granddaughter. And Selena is really, really beautiful. Congratulations to Mike and Rosie too. Daniel, as we listen to this message, I find this message so complete, though very concise, but so complete at the same time. Overall, what comes to you when you read or listen to this message, Daniel?
Wow, that's, I really agree with you, Vanessa. I think that the more that I read this message, the more I see different nuances, different topics that really we can spin out and talk for hours about. It's such a packed message with so much wisdom and so many different things. I think that for me, when I look at it, I really look at it as a recipe for joy, for happiness. We often talk about how the world sometimes looks like a very somber place where, there's lots of different wars and challenges happening out there. But this message, I think, gives us the overall idea that we must not excuse ourselves from the world, that isolating ourselves from the world won't necessarily help us or help others, that we really must find a way to be happy in the world, to change, I think, especially our mindset about how we see the world and how we live our lives in the world. So it's really a great recipe for how to live in a society that can be very daunting sometimes.
Exactly, especially nowadays. The world is literally convulsing in so many ways. Now, Daniel, I've divided this message in 7 pieces so we can discuss, break it down in practical terms for the listener. I'm going to play the first minute of it that talks about the sentiment of compassion so we can discuss it in greater depth.
This is a message from the Gospel According to Spiritism, Chapter 17, Item number 10, The Individual in the World. A sentiment of compassion must always animate the hearts of those who gather under the Lord's sight to implore the assistance of good spirits. Therefore, purify your heart. Do not let any mundane or futile thought linger in it. Lift up your spirit to those you are calling, so that, finding in you the proper dispositions, they may profusely sow the seed that should germinate in your soul and produce within it the fruit of charity and justice.
It's only a minute, Daniel, but it contains so much. As you said, we could talk for hours just about that very first minute, right?
Incredible, isn't it? It is incredible.
And Daniel, when he talks, the first thing it says is about compassion. The Dalai Lama talks on and off about the importance of compassion. And it's amazing for me that the spirits brought a message, and the first thing that they outlined for us is compassion. Compassion as a rule of thumb for us to live and lead our lives. How can we actually break this down in our daily lives so people who are listening to us find it very clear what compassion really means for each one of us in our daily lives?
You know, it's so interesting to see the relationship to many wonderful things in our world when we talk about compassion. You know, lately, whenever I've been thinking about compassion, my mind naturally goes, for instance, to the Dalai Lama, who always talks about the importance of compassion. It's always great to see beautiful messages popping up in various different parts of the world, in various different denominations. It doesn't really matter what kind of religious background or belief you have. Compassion is such an important part of our lives. And even if you don't have any kind of religious background, or you don't want to have any kind of religious background, that's okay too. Compassion is also a very important tool. And I've always think about compassion, and these things, we have some really powerful sentences and words here where we talk about charity as well. And I think compassion is really linked to charity and to doing good and to doing great things. And I struggle oftentimes to find out how can I get there? How can I have compassion? Because sometimes in our minds I have the impression that we think that either we have compassion or we don't have compassion, but we don't know how to develop compassion. Fortunately for me, I came across a beautiful question in that beautiful book, The Spirit's Book. And I found that in question 886 that talks about the definition of charity as Jesus understood it. I found a little recipe of how to develop, love, charity, and compassion by nature. And I love how the spirits tell us that, to begin our quest towards having love, we must start with benevolence. And for me, benevolence, or just wishing well for other people, is really linked to compassion. It's really about, maybe I don't know how to be compassionate yet, but I can start by simply wishing other people well. So if I wish other people well and I'm thinking about how their lives are, and I try to put myself in their shoes, then I become a little bit more compassionate. So compassion can be taught, compassion can be learned, can be exercised. And it makes a lot of sense for me here that the good spirits would start by talking about compassion, because we really want to start off our days, our lives, by having a great mindset, by having a kind and caring mindset, so that we can connect with the good spirits, as it says right there in the beginning of the message. I love how the spirits always so wisely connect things, right? A sentiment of compassion must always animate the hearts of those who implore the assistance of the good spirit. So having the right mindset, having that posture of being compassionate also help us connect with the great souls that come before us and who help us be better people. Not only do better things, but be better people. So isn't it amazing how we can really take a lesson that, everything that we do can and could start, and maybe should start, with a little bit of a compassionate thinking in our hearts and our minds, and compassion not only towards others but towards ourselves as well, which is also very important.
And it's interesting you're mentioning this, because you brought the foundation of it. It begins with benevolence, doing good to others, feeling good about others. And I find, sometimes we're so deeply attached to our animal nature that we tend to react instead of taking action. And we see, for example, the lack of compassion sometimes when people gather together and they start talking about other people without really giving these other people an opportunity for voicing why they are doing this or that or the other, or even for, thinking that person whom we're talking about, for example, has, reasons for doing this or for doing something that we don't understand. So we talk about compassion. Even, Daniel, I mentioned, for example, in Spiritist centers, we do the fraternal assistance, right? We talk to people so they receive some guidance regarding how to find, the proper book or the spiritual treatment that they need, etc. And it's such a very delicate task, because if we don't have compassion, often I hear people who do fraternal assistance saying, "Oh, you don't believe this person is going through this, but I know why. They're going through this because this, that, and the other." So where is the compassion there if we are judging all the time? So I don't see how people can be benevolent and compassionate if we're too judgmental. Do you agree?
I do, and I think that the technical term for that kind of thinking is unhelpful, right? Because when we do this, when we start to be a little bit judgmental, I think two things come to mind. One, every time that we are being judgmental and really passing judgment on others, we have a moral obligation to be better. And so it is really a difficult thing to do, because we're really placing a burden on ourselves. If we are criticizing others, then what we're really saying is, I know better, and I can do better, because otherwise there will be no point in really talking about it. And I don't find that to be often the case, because I think we have a lot of ways to go. And I think the number two part of that is anytime that we do this, we engage in this unhelpful behavior, or really focusing our minds in faults and flaws and criticism of others, we really are lowering our vibrations. We're focusing on things that are not helpful at all, and that doesn't benefit us at all, because it won't really lead us to anything positive in our lives ourselves. While it sometimes may seem very fun and powerful in the short term, it's really detrimental to us in the long term. And it goes, I think, exactly against the beginning of this message, right? Where he says, we must start with compassion if we want to connect with the good spirits. It's really the law of affinity, right? So we must really watch our thoughts. If we are, especially in a place that we deem to be a healthy one, mentally, emotionally, socially, spiritually, like a spiritist group or a society or center, we really must try to emulate that kind of thinking. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time.
Exactly. And in this message that we listening, that first minute, he talks about, it's amazing, because there's a spiritist message so complete that talks about our part and the fact that we're not alone, because they say, if you purify your hearts and you have elevated thoughts, then the good spirits will sow seeds that will germinate in fruits of charity and justice, telling us that we're not alone either. And if it's hard, we can keep on going, right?
Yeah, isn't that interesting how there's so much consistency in these messages that we read, not only in the Gospel according to Spiritism, but also in the other works of the codification. A little bit earlier in this chapter, we also see Kardec revisiting the idea of the parable of the sower. That explains a little bit the whole part, mention here of sowing seeds. But also, I find it so interesting that there's a connection between different things in different places. But absolutely, right? So how can we not talk about what we generally refer to the law of affinity here? And how can we not talk about the fact that the very message that tells us not to isolate ourselves from the world, the individual in the world, also tells us and reminds us that it's not just a physical world that we're dealing with here. We might just see the physical world, but we are part of a bigger world, the spiritual world, that happens at the same time, that's immersed in the physical world. So we also must remember that, the good spirits are there, and that our actions and our thought patterns not only influence our daily life with those who are around us in the physical realm, but also helps us connect to the law of affinity to those who no longer have a physical body but are still with us. So it's very relevant, and I love how it all comes together in a very simple and powerful manner.
It's amazing. Now, there is another very short piece that goes on in this message. Let us listen to this and keep on discussing.
Therefore, do not think that in incessantly exhorting you to prayer and mental evocation, we wish to advise you to live a mystic life that keeps you outside the laws of the society in which you have been condemned to live. No.
That's interesting. It says exactly that it's not only about praying or meditating. Nowadays, Daniel, I see many people, which is fine, but many people that tell me, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to go for a retreat, etc. And then they go back to the very same lives that they have led with everything mundane. So it's very paradoxical in that regard. What can we understand more deeply about that very piece of this message?
I love how it's in just the development and it's in accordance to what we were talking about before, right? For me, a very important topic that comes to mind when we listen to that specific part of it is the concept of a mystic life, right? Is this concept that we can, if we were only to isolate ourselves from the world, if we were only to avoid all kinds of problems in the world, we would be okay, right? That would be great. And I think that we get a hint of here is that, yes, it is great to elevate our minds and to pray and reflect, but we also must put things into practice. Just doing that, just sitting aside, not dealing with the problems we have in our day-to-day life may not be the best way of going about things, especially if we understand that we have many lives. There is reincarnation, and we come back many times. So I love how practical this gets, right? Just don't sit there and pray. Go out into the world and live and get better, be better. Try to mend the fences that you've broken down. Try to be a better person in the context of society in general. And I found this to be a very powerful message because sometimes we just think, I'm just going to avoid that problem altogether. I put it in the back of my mind. I have a couple of challenges with somebody at work. I'm not going to deal with it. I'm just going to forget about it. Guess what? Tomorrow we might have to go back to work again and deal with that person again. So that's really not a great strategy for the long run, is it?
No, not at all. Especially because the following piece to that very one you're discussing gives us another tip as well. Let us listen.
Live with the men and women of your time in the way that men and women should live. Observe the social necessities, even the frivolities of the day, but do it with a sentiment of purity, which may sanctify them.
What does that mean? Sacrifice our necessities.
This is such a great message. I think it's so liberating in a lot of ways. Sometimes I think following on what we were talking about before, we have this idea that I don't know where it came from. At least some of us do, that we have to be really serious and that we have to be really, focused and completely committed to being the absolute best person that we can every second of our lives. And that is great, and that's really noble. But the good spirits, knowing ourselves, they know that we also need a little bit of a break. They know that it is okay for us to interact with others and have a good time, have fun in a healthy way, right? I think that's what they're talking about here. You have physical lives. We have things that we do in society. You can go out there and enjoy them, but do so in a way that is healthy, that is not going to hurt anybody, and that uplifts not only your life, but that of others. We often hear the term happiness is not of this world, and we feel like we should kind of hurt ourselves in terms of martyrizing ourselves and cutting ourselves short. But we forget that Jesus was a pretty joyful person, that he came to bring good news, that he sat around with his disciples and had dinner, and they learned, but they had a good time, a good, healthy time. So I always try to remind myself that happiness is not of this world. The things that are going to make us happy are really not the physical things. But happiness is in this world. We can be happy in this world in a healthy way when we do great things. And so I think this little passage here from this great message tells us that it's okay for us to have a social life. and even indulge a little bit in the frivolities, right, in the little silly things of day-to-day life. Maybe you want to watch a movie. Maybe you want to watch a little bit of TV or go out for a rock concert. But do it in a way that is healthy, that it doesn't hurt other people, and that's okay, because we're still at the level. We can't be on spiritually all the time. Unfortunately, we're not at the level yet, but we shouldn't be too harsh on ourselves.
Like having a Facebook account. That's okay.
It is okay, right? It is okay. I think we put the burden on ourselves a little bit too much sometimes, and that makes it really hard for us to see that we're not in a sprint. We're in a marathon, right? We need to pace ourselves.
Exactly, Daniel. We're going to give a very short break, Daniel. When we come back, we have the other half of the message to discuss with you, okay?
All right.
We will return to our program after these messages.
New release, Liberation. In this compelling narrative, Andre Luiz emphasizes the work of high-order spirits in the effort to convert the spirit Gregorio to the good, an effort that culminates with the unforgettable re-encounter with his mother, herself a highly evolved spirit, wherein he surrenders to the irresistible call of love. The book also contains information on how unhappy spirits act as they try to involve incarnates in their wiles. The spirit author tells of the intercession of high-order spirits on behalf of human beings, demonstrating the divine compassion that grants to all the blessed opportunity to free themselves by means of study, labor, and persevering service in the practice of the good. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Want spirituous books for your children? At Edicei of America, you will find a collection of them. From the best-selling book, Our Father, in which the spirit Mei Mei through Chico Xavier brought countless poems, stories, and folk tales based on the Lord's Prayer, to the beautiful and educational collection by the author Adelson Sales on Back to School and many others. Buy your copy today at www.ediceiofamerica.com.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
If you missed out on previous shows, no worries. We have an on-demand sections of all previous shows and interviews. Go to our website, www.kardecradio.com.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Spiritism for Everyone is the live web study meeting and educational program of the United States Spiritist Council. This year, in commemoration of the 150th anniversary of the Gospel According to Spiritism, the Spiritism for Everyone program will present an in-depth study of this remarkable book. Join us every Wednesday evening through the web from any computer or mobile device, no matter where you are in the U.S. Spiritism for Everyone is free, open to all, and requires no registration. For more information, go to www.spiritist.us.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here discussing a message that is quite life-changing, I would say this way, from the Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec, The Individual in the World, Chapter 17, Item 10. Daniel Assisi, who is a speaker, a very active spiritist in the United States and around the world, he's here with us discussing this message. But Daniel, as we are talking about living life as is, in the sense of being in our current times, not trying to be away from it or isolated, but purifying our thoughts and feelings and doing our best to educate ourselves, I'd like to talk to the listener very briefly. I know your wife, Nicole Temple Assisi, is opening a new school, Thrive Public Schools, and I know we should commend her efforts for opening schools that are proposing new educational system. We really need very different and more modern educational system. Would you like to briefly tell us a little bit about it so the listener knows more about the school that she's opening in September?
Sure, I'll be glad to. Thank you. So my wife and I we work in the field of education and in a little bit of the different perspective, but Nicole has started and opened and ran charter schools here in California for quite a while. This is probably the fourth or fifth school that she's starting, and this one is very special because she has received some national recognition about her new innovative model of education, and it's really a summation of different experiences and things that she has seen through her career, but also through collaboration with lots of different folks that are doing some great things in education out there in the country today. And I think what's so special about these new endeavors, these new challenges and new opportunities ahead of us with education is to really do some personalized learning, to really personalize the education to the different kids, to really engage them through this personalization. So her school is really dedicated. It's a K school that's going to start this year here in San Diego, and it's really dedicated to honoring the idea that kids are different. We all know this, right? We even know this from neuroscience. All brains are different. People learn differently. So why is it that we still try to do the cookie cutter approach and teach our kids the exact same thing with everybody exactly the same time? So her approach to education, her model, is that we can personalize education, and kids can get more engaged and join into and learn the fun of learning and growing through a very interesting perspective of hands-on learning, with project-based learning, with social-emotional learning, also learning how to handle one's feelings, how to communicate, how to collaborate with others, all in a perspective of having really relevance, real-world relevance, or really tackling problems and challenges that are relevant to the world today. So we're quite excited to see the unfolding of another public school here in California that tries to cover this area, right? Try to provide options for parents who might not be satisfied with the current education choices that they have at home. So it's really exciting, and if I may, I would invite folks who would like to learn more just to go to thriveschools.org and learn more about the model and her new adventures, which are quite exciting.
Wonderful, Daniel. Wonderful. And congratulations, our thoughts and prayers to this new beginning. Because as we're discussing the message, the next paragraph of the message talks about the fact that we live in a world that is very diverse. It has different people. So we need educational systems that really tailor to the needs of this diversity. Let us just listen to this and continue discussing, Daniel.
You have been called to enter into contact with spirits of different natures and opposite characters. Do not clash with any of those with whom you might find yourself. Be cheerful and happy, but of the cheerfulness provided by a clear conscience and the happiness of the heirs of heaven, counting the days that will draw them nearer to their inheritance. Virtue does not consist in assuming a stern and gloomy face or in rejecting the pleasures that your human conditions allow.
Well.
Wow. Wow. This is amazing, right? This is just amazing because, Vanessa, this was written 150 years ago. Isn't that fantastic? It's another proof of the wisdom of the good spirits who were helping codify Spiritism. We're talking about diversity here. This is a topic that only in the last maybe 20, 30, 40 years here in our physical world have become important to us in this country. But here are the spirits 150 years ago saying that we've been called to enter in contact with people of different natures and characters, that we must necessarily navigate different people, different challenges, and that we must be open to it, be cheerful and happy, because it's going to help us grow. Diversity and this openness only adds to us. It's amazing, isn't it?
It is amazing, and especially when it talks about how we should be. It says, be joyful, be happy, and and a joy that gives way to clear conscience. I mean, isn't it the very message of Jesus? He told us, like, be joyful no matter what's happening. We have so much to be grateful for. And I was reading a book the other day by a doctor in Brazil, Augusto Corey. He wrote a book that is phenomenal about happiness and goes hand in hand with this message in the sense he says, as a psychiatrist, he says, the happiest people I've come across and are those who judge very little, and they are grateful for everything, and they try to enjoy and never take for granted the little pleasures and things in life. So here is this message 150 years ago telling us precisely how to set the tone of our daily lives. Daniel, do you think it's too hard?
I think it's hard, right? I think it's hard because we make it hard. I love how when I look at this Be Cheerful and Happy, it really, I think, underlines the tone of the whole chapter, right? Because this is one little passage out of chapter 17 of the Gospel, as explained by Spiritism. And the title of that chapter is Be Perfect. And I think really is an invitation, right? It's not an order, it's an invitation. Be perfect, be cheerful and happy. And I love how this automatically takes me back to the beginning of this message when he says something important about compassion and about mindset. And I really think more and more that is really up to us, that the big battle that we have is to really change our minds, right, about how we want to look at the world. When there's a beautiful sentence from a spiritualist writer that I like to read every once in a while called Wayne Dyer. And he said something that I think is really powerful. He says, when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at change. And I think it's in perfect alignment to what we talk about in Spiritism. If we have the mindset to really look at the world, and instead of seeing all the different wars, explosions, and things that are happening out there, we also take a moment to recognize that there's some beautiful things going on, that we go out every day and we cross the street and we don't get run over by a car, and that there are people that are helping each other every day, and you have tons of videos of that in social media today if we only look for it. But we have to look for it. Once we focus on that, that fills us with such a cheerfulness to being such a great place. And that just makes life easier. So it's really kind of an active choice that we have to make. We have to decide, I am going to have a cheerful and happy disposition towards life. I'm going to focus on the positive. And I'm going to look into the positive of everything. And once we do that, maybe we get a little bit more of a spring in our steps. Maybe we get a little bit happier, a little bit more tolerant. And I love going back to that question that we talked about earlier in the Spirit's book as well, right? The question 886 about charity, right? Because benevolence, that positive attitude towards things, is really the first step in everything that we do. If we have that positive attitude, then it becomes a lot easier to become indulgent, to tolerate everything that's happening in our lives, maybe even those people who are not, we perceive to be not so great towards us, to really learn how to forgive the difficult moments of our life. But we have to be cheerful and happy. That's the message that Jesus left us.
And I think that's probably the reason why the next sentence, the next paragraph, relies totally on God. Because if it's too hard, well, we have God. Then everything is going to flow. Let us just listen to this to complement and solidify this very message.
It is sufficient to report all the actions of your life to the Creator who has given such life. It is sufficient when one begins or finishes a deed to lift one's thought to that Creator and to ask Him, in an impulse of the soul, to grant His watch care for carrying it out, and to grant His blessing for finishing it. In all that you do, look to the source of all things. Do not do anything without the thought of God purifying and sanctifying your acts.
Now, Daniel, this can be very strong for us, because if it's too hard, when we surrender to the loving care of God, everything will flow, even if we can't grasp it or really see light further down our road with God, everything will be transformed, don't you think?
I absolutely agree. And I often think about this because we all hit bumps in our lives. And sometimes doubt sets in and we're not quite sure if we can handle it. But I really think that if we really are to think about the idea of God, and God is explained to clear and rational faith, like we try to do in Spiritism, we really start thinking that God has to be perfect and has to be all-knowing if God is God. It's the very definition of God. So if that is the case, if God is just and loving and all wisdom, then all the challenges that we have in our lives can be surmounted. They can be overcome. Otherwise, God was not good. Otherwise, it would be really a mean God, just giving us challenges and troubles that we cannot handle. That would be very mean, and God's absolutely not that. So in a way, when challenges come to us, they are very subtle compliments. It's really the way of the universe telling us, hey, you're prepared for this. You can handle this. Maybe not by yourself, but with others. So challenges that come to us really are a complement of our ability to handle those and to take care of things if we have a sunny disposition for that. And I think that's what I really get when I look at this and think about the fact that God is there for us and that we can always, in all things, there's a really beautiful sentence there that really strikes me, is in all that you do, look to the source of all things, right? Try to understand and see the divine aspect in everything that's happening. And when we do that, I think it helps us a little bit to distance ourselves from our physical perspective. Sometimes we get a little bit trapped in just our physical lives and don't realize or forget that we are immortal spirits going through many different challenges and that everybody around us is also going through many different challenges. And that's going to be okay. And that's a really fulfilling and powerful idea to remind ourselves of.
And you're so right. The other day I was listening to a father of 3, twins and a girl. He was so amazing. He was going through a tough time. And he said to me, Vanessa, I know it's hard what I'm going through with my family, but I tell you, I don't know how, but if God gave me a family to provide, I will find strength to get out of this problem and provide to all of them to the best of my ability. I'm not going to quit, he said, no matter their circumstances. I mean, this is fascinating because he's resilient to the very tough times, and he's keeping on going no matter what because he believes God believes in him. So we needed to reinforce every time God trusts us. We should also trust God that he knows why we go through stuff. Now, Daniel, the final part of this message gives us a very powerful and unforgettable guidance. Let us listen.
As Christ said, perfection is found entirely in the practice of absolute charity, but the duties of charity extend to all social positions, from the lowest to the highest. Those who live in isolation would have no charity to practice. It is only through contact with their fellow beings in the most arduous struggles that they find an opportunity to practice it. Thus, those who isolate themselves intentionally deprive themselves of the most powerful means of perfection, since they have only themselves to think of. Their lives are those of a selfish person. Do not imagine, therefore, that in order to live in constant communication with us, to live in the Lord's sight, that you must put on the Silas and cover yourself.
Daniel, when he talks about not living in isolation. Now, we talked a little bit before about the fact that we shouldn't live isolated, but many people, when they become more spiritual, when they found their pathway in spirituality, they really get away out of the daily lives. And then we have two, let's say, sects of people. Those who are living the mundane life and those who are thinking they're in their spiritual life, but they're not really being spiritual because they are away from the world. And Chico Xavier is a great example for us of how to be here in this daily life, irrespective of how hard it is, and never be distant from people in our lives. What do you think about this?
So true, and I think that all the great messengers and all the great souls that we have as great examples out there, from the Mother Teresa's to the Arbor Schweitzers and so forth, we know that they're not just, reading, learning, growing, praying, meditating and by themselves. They're going out into the world and interacting with people and fundamentally changing people's lives by just being themselves. And this is, I think, the biggest takeaway that we have from the message is that we live in a communal world where we must interact with each other, and we cannot just hide our light under our own bushel. We have to go out there and interact with other people because it's good for us. It's about the diversity that we were talking about, about learning different perspectives. It's about growing. It's about also helping others, because as we learn and grow, we also help others learn and grow, and that's such a beautiful and powerful message. And I'm always surprised how sometimes we forget that our purpose here on life is not only to grow ourselves, but to also, as the spirits describe in another lovely question in the Spirits book, question I think 132 about the meaning of life. We have to grow and learn, and that's the reason why we're here. But there's a second reason to it. We also need to take our part in the creation. We also have to help others grow and learn. And I love how God is so wise and so powerful that God created a system in which when I learn and I do great things, you benefit from it. And when you learn and you do great things, I benefit from it. So we cannot hide ourselves. We must live together and learn to interact with others and take the best of everyone that we come across and give our best to everyone that comes across. And wouldn't that be a much better world if we were able to do just that?
And then we want to thank Abby Sher, who is from Baltimore, Maryland. She's sharing with us that she's enjoying the program very much. Thank you, Abby. We send you lots of loving care and gratitude for always being present at Kardec Radio. Now, Daniel, the message ends by saying God is love, and so on and so forth. But God is love. What would you like to share with us as your final comments about this transforming message that was published 150 years ago?
So God is absolutely love. And that's the beauty, I think, of this message and of this book that was published 150 years ago, and by consequence of Spiritism, this beautiful body of knowledge, who shows us that there is indeed an interaction between the physical realm and the spiritual realm, and that all these things really mean that there is a loving and caring and wise God out there watching for us, and that everything that we do, it's going to be okay, and that we can go ahead and make the best possible choices in the world. Isn't it amazing how God loves us so much that God lets us make our own decisions, take our own path of our lives in our hands? And not only that, but God is constantly giving us the means, the resources with which to make these great choices. And I think these messages that we find here, like this one, The Individual in the World, and many of the other ones in the Gospel According to Spiritism, which we suggest, obviously, as a book for everybody out there. Just opening it randomly, I like doing that sometimes, and reading a little passage when I'm feeling happy or when I'm feeling not so happy, just to kind of try to meditate and think about it. So God is absolutely love, and we must not forget that there's a lot of joy out there, and that if we change the way we look at things, and that if we really take the time to meditate about our lives and our lives as spiritual beings, and to remind ourselves that we are just temporarily in a physical body, that we're not spirits, we're not physical bodies that have a spirit, but rather that we're a spirit that has a physical body, and take a little bit of perspective in that, then it will become a lot easier and a lot better to be in this beautiful world. And never forget for a second that God is watching us, and that even if happiness is not of this world, happiness is in this world. And all we have to do is look around and uplift ourselves. And there's a beautiful sentence that while we're talking, I was reminded of a beautiful sentence by Paul in the New Testament in the letter to Romans, where he says, if God is for us, who can be against us? And I think ultimately that is really the message here. There's lots of things for us to do. We can live happier, productive lives. Let's just start today by just changing our perspective, our mindset, by being more compassionate, by being more benevolent and wishing well, and everything else will come.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for lifting us up today, Daniel. And we wish you and Nicole the very best in this new and important endeavor of bringing new educational tools and systems for our humanity on the earth. Thank you so much, Daniel, for everything.
Thank you for having me here, and thank you for affording us the opportunity to talk about these lovely, uplifting messages that certainly nourish our souls. Thank you. Dear listener, you can listen to this whole program again because we are at iTunes, at TuneIn Radio, Blog Talk Radio, and at our very website, KardecRadio.com. And you can share this word with others because this very message can be really uplifting, can be encouraging, can strengthen us in our resilience and cheer us up. Let us finalize, instead of our final prayer, this message. Let us listen to this again and wrap up the program in the form of a prayer. This message becomes our prayer for this week. In a week from today, we have much, much more, and it's going to be Marco Magalhães and Marco de Clay from Canada discussing the messengers. And you can participate live the whole month of August, all live programs for you. Let us listen to this message again.
This is a message from the Gospel according to Spiritism, Chapter 17, Item number 10. The individual in the world. A sentiment of compassion must always animate the hearts of those who gather under the Lord's sight to implore the assistance of good spirits. Therefore, purify your heart. Do not let any mundane or futile thought linger in it. Lift up your spirit to those you are calling, so that, finding in you the proper dispositions, they may profusely sow the seed that should germinate in your soul and produce within it the fruit of charity and justice. Therefore, do not think that in incessantly exhorting you to prayer and mental evocation, we wish to advise you to live a mystic life that keeps you outside the laws of the society in which you have been condemned to live. No. Live with the men and women of your time in the way that men and women should live. Observe the social necessities, even the frivolities of the day, but do it with a sentiment of purity, which may sanctify them. You have been called to enter into contact with spirits of different natures and opposite characters. Do not clash with any of those with whom you might find yourself. Be cheerful and happy, but of the cheerfulness provided by a clear conscience, and the happiness of the heirs of heaven, counting the days that will draw them nearer to their inheritance. Virtue does not consist in assuming a stern and gloomy face, or in rejecting the pleasures that your human conditions allow. It is sufficient to report all the actions of your life to the Creator who has given such life. It is sufficient when one begins or finishes a deed to lift one's thought to that Creator and to ask Him, in an impulse of the soul, to grant His watch care for carrying it out, and to grant His blessing for finishing it. In all that you do, look to the source of all things. Do not do anything without the thought of God purifying and sanctifying your acts. As Christ said, perfection is found entirely in the practice of absolute charity, but the duties of charity extend to all social positions, from the lowest to the highest. Those who live in isolation would have no charity to practice. It is only through contact with their fellow beings in the most arduous struggles that they find an opportunity to practice it. Thus, those who isolate themselves intentionally deprive themselves of the most powerful means of perfection, since they have only themselves to think of. Their lives are those of a selfish person. Do not imagine, therefore, that in order to live in constant communication with us, to live in the Lord's sight, that you must put on bacillus and cover yourselves with ashes. No, no, and once more no. Be happy in accordance with the needs of humankind, but may your happiness never hold a thought or commit an action that might offend God, or anything that might cloud the face of those who love and guide you. God is love, and He blesses all those who love virtuously. A Protector Spirit, Bordeaux, 1863.
This is it for today, dear listener. We hope you have enjoyed. If you have any questions, please write to us at KardecRadio.com. We have a contact form. We'll always be happy to listen from you. Right now, we remind you that tomorrow at 8 p.m. we have Spiritist Awareness. Lots of hosts around the world telling you about the message that is immortal, universal, and timeless. Spiritism. Blessings. Lots of blessings to you.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.